Hi, my name is Ryan Trefny. I'm the National Boatswains mate for this year's Sea Scouts quarterdeck, and this is TW, our incoming National Commodore. So, TW, could you tell us a bit about your scouting background?
Well, I got started as one of the dads that took our kids camping. I ended up being a scoutmaster for a few years. I was a venturing career advisor. Got into Sea Scouts in about 2006 with my eldest son, who went on to become a quartermaster. We started a ship that's still going today and has been National Flagship Fleet 5 years, I think, in a row. I got involved as a council commodore for a few years, and then I just finished 3 years as Southern Region Commodore before taking on this job.
All right, could you tell us a bit about your boating background?
I grew up paddling on rivers in the Ozarks. I grew up in northeast Arkansas, so I did a lot of canoeing in those days. Took up kayaking in college. It was a little bit out of boating for a while, but got back in when did a little bit of paddling in Boy Scouts, and then took up sailing in Sea Scouts. So that's been quite a few years ago. At this point, I have a 100-ton master's license with inland with a auxiliary sail endorsement. I'm a coxswain in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and I've spent quite a few days of cruising with Sea Scouts.
All right, that's really cool. Now that we know a little bit more about you, let's talk about Sea Scouts. So, it seems like there's been a lot of change in the program over the past few years, so why is that?
Well, if you look at our history, Sea Scouts has been unfortunately on a decline for the past few years. You've been in scouting for what, a little more than 10 years?
It has been probably a little more than 10 years, I think about 13 years.
Well, in the last 10 years, if you look at our numbers, at the end of 2008, we had 557 ships nationally with about 5,785 youth primary registered. Fast forward 10 years to the end of 2018, say end of last year, we had 377 ships, 3,286 scouts registered, primary registered, plus another about 1,000 more that are dual registered, so their primary is in a Scouts BSA troop or a venturing crew. So what that means is that we've lost a third of our ships and a third of our scouts in the last 10 years. During that time, we had 50 councils that went from some ships to 0 ships. Right now, only about half of the BSA's councils actually have any ships. So the reason for the change is our attempt to turn that around. So we can't survive another decade like that. We need to find a way to achieve growth, and the classic definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So if we want different results, we have to change some things.
So how are we going to grow? Because we can't keep going on this downward trend for Sea Scouts to survive.
Well, there's several aspects of that. One of those is that we need to expand program opportunities. So the primary image of Sea Scouts in most people's mind is a bunch of people in Navy uniforms that sail 50-foot sailboats in salt water. But the reality is a lot broader than that. We can sail with paddlecraft. Paddlecraft are really the most important addition to Sea Scouts. When we did that 2016 revision of the Sea Scout manual, we added a paddlecraft track that allows you to be a paddlecraft primary ship. A lot of ships do paddlecraft, like our ship
Right.
does paddlecraft, but that's not a primary focus. Now you can have that as a primary focus. We've even had Macy Stone over in East Texas about 3 years ago did the first paddlecraft-based quartermaster cruise. So you can really do that whole track. That opens Sea Scouts to really any place in the country. We can have Sea Scouts, and do have Sea Scouts in West Texas, pretty much anywhere. So between small boat sailing, paddlecraft, large boat sailing, other forms, scuba is a big growth area for us too. We have more and more scuba ships. We're a lot more applicable in a lot more places than we once were. That doesn't mean we're not going to try to start as many sailing ships as we can. That's still a core competency for us, and it's not something we want to lose. But we need to be broader than that. We need to be perceived as applicable anywhere in the country by our scout councils.
That's what I'm going to follow up into that. And so how does our transition into allowing paddlecraft to be a part of the BSA make Sea Scouts easier and more appealing to local councils?
So it's a good question. One of the things BSA professionals are heavily trained appropriately to be very risk averse and worry about risk. And if you were to go in to some council that doesn't have Sea Scouts and propose that we start, if they have that legacy impression of us, which says, oh, that means it's going to be a great big boat, it's going to be expensive, potential for big liability, they're going to be resistant to that. So it looks scary and dangerous and unknown. Yeah, on the other hand, if you go in and want to start a unit that's primarily paddlecraft based, it really doesn't sound any scarier than starting a Scouts BSA troop or a venturing crew. In fact, it isn't. It's pretty much, it's about the same level of effort, and it's something that they're comfortable with. They've got a scout camp already that's full of canoes and kayaks. They know that world. So it's not, it's much closer to their comfort zone. That means that BSA itself, the professional side, is much more receptive to that. But there's another twist to that too. One of our limitations to growth has been the availability of qualified youth to be skippers and mates. Qualified adults, excuse me, to be skippers and mates. And people with sailing experience, there are quite a few of them out there, but there are not enough of them. It's a lot easier to transition someone from a scoutmaster or an assistant scoutmaster role into a paddlecraft-based ship than into a sailing ship. That doesn't mean we don't do both a lot, but it just gives us access to a bigger pool of adults willing to start ships.
Yes, that's true. And I think from my perspective, I remember going to summer camps as a Boy Scout, and you never saw much sailing at a summer camp, but there was often a lot of canoeing, kayaking, rowing. And so if you kind of open up that market, I suppose, in Sea Scouts, you're going to see, I think, a more natural transition from maybe some Scouts BSA youth want to do more paddlecraft and want to do more of that, except they kind of want to lead that by themselves, given the nature of Sea Scouts BSA is sort of like venturing that it's more youth-led.
I think you're on the right track. I think that's the opportunity for us, it's just another path to creating ships, but it's a path that works everywhere, that's less scary to the rest of BSA. Again, we're going to continue to start every sailing ship we can, but we're going to start paddlecraft ships too. And that's how we're going to get our growth back. I think that we've pretty much proven that we're not fast enough at starting sailing ships. So we've got to do more, and that's what we're going to try to do.
All right, that sounds like a good idea. I kind of want to change the subject a little bit from here. What I've noticed in the Sea Scouts community is that there is a perception of the national leadership, especially in Irving, that we're just trying to mess things up and take away old traditions. What is your take on that?
So it's a good question, and I hear that a lot, and I think it's pretty far from the reality. The way Sea Scouts works now, so if you remember a few years ago, the National Board elevated Sea Scouts to be a top-level program, so it's a peer to venturing, to Scouts BSA, to Cub Scouts. And all of the programs really work the same. They have a national steering committee, a national governing board, if you will. In our case, it's called the National Sea Scout Support Committee, that's comprised of volunteers. And they're the ones that are really making decisions. Anything momentous gets escalated to the National Program Support Committee, where, same thing for venturing, same thing for Scouts BSA, where those decisions get approved. But there's really not a lot of interference from corporate BSA, if you will, in that. It's really a bunch of people that are longtime Sea Scout volunteers that are trying to do the best thing for the program. And they're looking at the numbers like what I've given you and trying to figure out how do we turn this around? How do we not throw away the essence of Sea Scouts, but turn it into a growth program again? And I think people feel somewhat disconnected from that process, and that's something we've got to fix. But the reality is everyone out there has a representative on that committee. So the key representatives for people in the field are the regional commodores. So Tom McMullen replaced me as Southern Region Commodore. So anyone in Southern Region, Tom is your voice to that committee. And part of his job is to assess what's going on and to take input about what's working and what's not back to that committee. Same thing for the other three regions. On the youth side, as you know, you just finished a term as a regional bosun, where you were the representative of the youth Sea Scouts. The regional and national bosuns are really important positions. because not only do those represent the youth Sea Scouts to the rest of the Sea Scout program, but they represent Sea Scouts to the board. The regional bosuns are members of the executive committee and board for the region. The national bosun is actually one of the 3 youth members of the national board. So the national bosun actually has a vote in the future of BSA at the very top level, just as you as a regional bosun had that vote. So we have the ability to influence that, and each person out there does. I'll let you talk about how to contact the youth side, but from the adult side, it's really easy to find your regional commodore. If you go to cscout.org, there's a contact us page. Go fill that out, and that'll get routed to the appropriate regional commodore. If you can't figure out how to do that, you're welcome to try to contact me. T.W. Cook, TWCOOK at cscout.org will reach me by email. What about the youth side?
Well, on the youth side, if you are in a council with a council bosun, that's probably the easiest point of contact to start going up the chain of command, so to speak, even though there's really no command in that chain.
No.
But if you don't have a council bosun, you might have an area bosun, and to find them, you can go on the Sea Scouts BSA website, and usually the regional tabs on that website have the youth quarterdeck listed on a page or something like that. And I know when I was Southern Region Bosun, we had all the area bosuns and myself listed in the Southern Region quarterdeck tab on the Southern Region page. And often regional officers will have their own social media accounts, and what you can do is find their social media account. It's probably listed on the website, and directly contact them from there, and then they can pass the word up to some of the other youth officers as well.
Okay, good.
So I guess I kind of wanted to end this chat with a question. Where do we go from here? What's the plan in the future years?
Well, the mission of the Boy Scouts of America is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetimes by instilling in them the values of the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. BSA says of itself that the way we deliver character and leadership is the distinguishing feature of BSA. That's our competitive advantage. And I think that's really true of us in Sea Scouts. The essence of Sea Scouts isn't big boats or small boats or sailboats or power boats. It's the way we use them on the water, on, around, under the water, to provide program for our youth. And that's what we've really got to continue to carry forward. We've got to figure out how to build that. Ultimately, what we have to do is use that we've got to start ships. We've got to retain our ships. It doesn't help if we start 5 ships but we lose 6.
Right.
So we've got to continue to strengthen our ships. We need to grow our ships. One of the things I'm most excited about this year is that we've got a really brilliant quarterdeck at the national level that you're a member of. Hannah Carter, as our national bosun, is doing some great work already. We've got a great slate of regional bosuns, and they have some big plans which you'll be hearing about. You guys are going to be doing more videos to explain that in their future up. So, we've got to figure out a way to get back to growth. Patrick Sterrett, who's our Assistant Chief Scout Executive, has a saying he's fond of: there is no comfort in the growth zone, but there is no growth in the comfort zone. So I think we have to get out of that comfort zone and back into the growth zone. I think we can do it. We've got the right people. The program is in good shape. We've really gone through and reinvented Sea Scouts, if you look at it. The expansion of the program into paddlecraft, the repackaging of Sea Scouts in uniforms that make us look like we're more part of the BSA. We've got a really strong slate of regional commodores. We really have had a better regional and area leadership than we've had. Same thing on the youth side. So I think we've got all the pieces, but we really have to put those pieces together, and somehow we have to get us back to growing some ships. I think we're at the position, so there's some good news on that front. So 2017, we actually managed a slight growth in number of youth. It was slight, but we actually made it back into the black. 2018 was a down year again. Part of that's because a lot of people had trouble dealing with youth protection changes and recharters were late. So the end of year numbers didn't look as good as they could. I think we've recovered most of that. I think this year could be a growth year and will be a growth year. And I think we're at the beginning, what could be the beginning of the great Sea Scout renaissance. Sea Scouts goes back on a growth path. Hannah's has aggressive targets for growth and some good plans for that. We certainly intend to back that up from the National Committee standpoint. But everyone's going to have to dive in and help move us forward. We've got to rebuild the relationships with our BSA councils. We've got to find people from outside Sea Scouts, probably from other parts of BSA, from anywhere who are willing to come in and start ships. We've got to recruit heavily. One of the things that we've done, had a big emphasis on recruiting, including the webinar, the most recent back-to-school recruiting webinar that has been done. So we're starting to try to put together material to help people do that. But ultimately, we have to find a way to grow. If we don't do that, nothing else really matters. But on the positive side, I think we're in good shape. We've got the programs in good shape. We've got the right people. We just need to all pitch in and do it.
Well, thank you, TW. I think you answered a lot of my questions, as well as a lot of the questions of many Sea Scouts and Scouters out there. And I think you've provided a really clear vision for the future of Sea Scouts. So thank you. That's TW, our National Commodore, and I'm Ryan Trefny, the National Boatswains Mate. Thank you.
Man.